One of the most powerful officials in South Africa's ruling party charged with corruption. Critics say the case is politically motivated. The government insists it's part of the president's promise to root out graft. So, will he be able to clean up the government? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. Fraud and corruption. Those are the charges facing the ANC's Secretary General Ace Magashule, who appeared in court on Friday. The case centers around a scandal about 6 years ago when he was the head of Free State. Millions of dollars allocated to remove asbestos from homes went missing. Magashule denies any wrongdoing. He's the most senior ANC official to face prosecution since the president took office. Cyril Ramaphosa has promised to stamp out graft in the party and government, but he's accused of making this case personal because Magashule is an ANC heavyweight and from a rival faction. It's the latest incident to expose divisions within the party. Al Jazeera's Famida Miller was at the courthouse in Bloemfontein.
About 5 years ago, the government of the Free State province, which was run by then Premier Ace Magashule, awarded a contract to a company to identify homes with roofs made from asbestos sheeting. The asbestos is making people ill and was supposed to be removed and the roofs replaced. It appears that of the $15 million paid for the work, just a tenth of that was actually used to do the work, but none of the roofs replaced. Instead, millions of dollars was looted. It's alleged that instructions for payment to this company and its subcontractors came from the office of Ace Magashule and that he may have pocketed close to $1 million. Magashule has been charged with fraud and corruption. He's released on bail and will again appear in court next year. Now, this may be the first time that the Secretary General of the ANC has been charged, but it's certainly not the first time he's been linked to corruption scandals in this province. Thousands of people have turned out to the Bloemfontein's Magistrates Court to show their support for the former Premier Ace Magashule. They say that the charges against him are politically motivated and that he's done nothing wrong. They say that when he was Premier, he stood by people in this province and now they're here to show their support. But President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised to fight corruption, and that fight is likely to start within his own party. The charges against Ace Magashule is something that is likely to cause further division within an already divided ANC, a party that's already in crisis. Famida Miller for Inside Story.
All right, let's introduce our panel in Pretoria. Somadoda Fikeni, an independent political and policy analyst affiliated with the University of South Africa. And in Johannesburg, David Lewis, Executive Director at Corruption Watch, which encourages public participation in combating graft. Welcome to you both. Somadoda, let me start with you. How powerful is Ace Magashule and how significant is it that a case has been brought against him?
He's quite a powerful figure in a sense that he was elected to become the Secretary General of the ruling party, which is akin to being an administrative and political CEO of the ruling party. So to that extent, he has the latitude to move around on full-time basis, mobilizing. At the same time, he's also very much linked to the former President Jacob Zuma, who is still aggrieved by many things which are taking place within the ANC, and he believes he's also a victim of political machinations within the new ANC leadership. And ANC is a deeply divided organization, almost in equal halves. So the battle for the soul of the ANC will be fought at all levels. That's why each side tend to have a sense of conspiracy whenever there is a move. And it also represents the clash of perspectives because Ace Magashule is the one person who presents himself as representing the radical ideological side of the ANC, who will implement the resolutions of the ANC. On the other side, President Cyril Ramaphosa had promised to fight corruption and renew the ANC and grow the economy.
David, from your vantage point, what are the political ramifications of all of this?
Well, I think they're very profound. You know, the ANC is at the core of our corruption problem, and until the divisions in the ANC are sorted out, and I don't hold out much hope for the two factions to continue living in the same party. But until these factional fights are sorted out, we're not going to conquer corruption. And one of the reasons why the factional fights have lasted to the extent that they have, and why corrupt people feel so comfortable in the ANC, is that ANC leaders have hitherto effectively been exempt from the attention of the law enforcement agencies. And the fact that one of the two most powerful leaders in the ANC, one of the two most senior leaders in the ANC, has now been arrested and charged, suggests that we might be approaching the point of no return between these two factions. And what is going to be interesting to see is how the ANC reacts in the short term to the arrest and prosecution of their Secretary General, because they're bound by a resolution he is bound by a resolution of the ANC at their last conference to step down from his position. But I somehow don't see that happening without huge pressure from the other side, and I'm not sure that they will have the courage to do that.
So, Madoda, will this case against Ace Magashule benefit President Ramaphosa? Will it make it easier for him to impose his will on such a divided ruling party?
Not immediately. The first thing we can expect is a backlash and also a very strong push in the ANC's midterm conference next year. So it is in that battleground where it will become clear as to what the balance of power is. At the same time, if Cyril Ramaphosa can demonstrate that he's not interfering in any of the criminal investigations of corruption, and that he doesn't really care whether it is a person from his faction or a person from another faction who is involved, as long as corruption is being fought. It might just be that the faction he's facing might be weakened by the law and the prosecutions rather than in the battle theater of politics within the ANC itself.
David, there are those who say that this case has nothing to do with corruption, that it's purely politically driven. What do you say?
Absolute nonsense. Obviously there are possible motives for politically driving this case, although I really don't believe that Ramaphosa is doing that. They could have charged Ace Magashule with several corruption cases, quite frankly. I mean, he was very involved in the infamous Estina Dairy case. And he's, how do I say this? He has been mentioned in corruption issues for a very long time. And the Free State government, which he headed for a very long time, is notoriously inept and corrupt government. And it's often been said about the Free State government is that nothing happened in the Free State without Ace Magashule's prior knowledge and consent. So I don't believe that has any validity whatsoever. The notion that this is purely politically driven and has nothing to do with corruption, I believe has no credibility whatsoever.
So, Madoda, this case stems from Ace Magashule's alleged role in a $15 million contract to find and remove asbestos from homes in disadvantaged neighborhoods in the Free State province. Could you tell us more about how that played out?
What happened here is that there was money assigned for the removal of asbestos because of the health concerns. And that in itself seemed not to have been used for the purpose, but was pocketed by a businessman who is politically connected. And most of those asbestos roofs were never actually removed. And this businessman has also confirmed in the Zondo commission into the state capture that he donated part of the money to the ANC itself and gave some individuals and friends some of the money. So that is the background to this particular issue. But as was mentioned by my colleague, there are several other cases which have emanated from within the province itself of Free State and across the country, frankly speaking.
David, how much outrage is there in South Africa amongst the public when it comes to these allegations of corruption and the corruption cases?
I think there's considerable outrage. You know, our model is to ask the public to furnish us with reports of corruption, which they do in great numbers, and we have a lot of contact with communities as well, and with very oppressed communities, very disadvantaged communities. And the best thing that South Africa has got going for it is that the public have not accepted that corruption is something that they can do nothing about. You know, in some countries that is indeed so, but not in South Africa. And it's what, as I say, it's our best hope for tackling corruption is the fact that there is continued outrage, as was exhibited recently when funds meant to provide protective personal equipment for doctors and nurses and other hospital personnel was looted. And the public were outraged. You know, I would have thought by now they would have gotten used to it, but they're not. And long may that continue.
So, Madoda, what is the public sentiment right now when it comes to this case against Ace Magashule? How are people reacting in the country?
The general mood in the country is that they do not care which faction is affected, which politician is affected. They want some consequence management. They want accountability. They want people involved in corruption to be taken to task, especially now that they realize the collapse of state-owned companies, the deficit that we have, as well as the debt crisis that is rising, and the imposition of further levies on people to pay. Now they are making the connection that if they look the other way, or if they leave things to just a few or NGOs, then they are going to pay the price. They are beginning to see things in the failure of some of the state companies that they have not seen before. They are taken for granted. It is where you are beginning to see the rise of active citizenship, which otherwise we had not seen in a long while.
David, have there been other officials arrested or properties seized in relation to this asbestos removal contract that's in the news because of the case against Ace Magashule?
Yes, I think Somadoda might know this more accurately, but I think that 6 or 7 people were arrested several weeks ago, including the businessman who owns the firm that was meant to actually remove the asbestos, and a number of other government officials. I'm not certain whether property has been seized already, but I think that it has been. I seem to recollect that in the case of the businessman, about 35 luxury cars were seized. But I speak under correction there, but I think it has. I think the asset seizure and freezing of assets has proceeded already. And in fact, Ace Magashule will appear in court, I think, on the 19th of February with those others who have already been charged.
So, Madoda, by and large, how does the public feel when it comes to the judicial system in South Africa? Do they have faith in it?
There is a strong faith in the judicial system because when the legislature was failing to account or to hold political leaders like the previous president to account, they were able to rise to the occasion and show some degree of independence. And of course, when the executive itself was involved, they've shown an amazing level of independence. Of course, we should not take it out that there is still a call for further transformation of the judiciary itself, because others are making claims that because it is not transformed, it tends to look into the public sector corruption, but look the other way when you have multiple billions, such as the one of Steinhoff, which is a private sector corruption, which is the one including the construction companies that seem to have swindled some money through collusion during the World Cup. So that in itself is still an issue that is being raised and at times is being weaponized and politicized.
David, do you believe this case will bolster people's faith in the judicial system? I mean, will there be a sense that perhaps a corner has been turned here, that this is maybe a big step forward?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, it's not the judicial systems, the judiciary's reputation that is at stake here and that needs bolstering. It's the prosecutorial authority, which was notoriously corrupted under the Zuma regime. And that's why I think there's not likely to be any interference in this case, because, you know, truly the hallmark of the Zuma administration was the extent to which the independence of the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, was eliminated. And if this case bolsters the credibility of anyone, it will be that of the National Prosecuting Authority. But what the National Prosecuting Authority has to show is not only independence in prosecuting this case, but also competence in prosecuting this case. And under Zuma, both their independence and their competency was massively eroded. And they are the ones who truly stand to lose or gain reputation by this case, not so much the judiciary.
So, Madoda, President Ramaphosa promised to tackle corruption. He has an anti-corruption agenda. Has he been doing that? Has he been following through on his promises? And if so, has he been effective?
Well, I do think that there were signs of frustration from the public, seeing that wheels were turning very slow. And he seemed to have justified that by saying he's still building the capacity of the prosecuting body, the capacity of the investigations, and also dealing, frankly speaking, with undoing the damage of political deployments in some of these entities, which are quite crucial in any successful, crime intelligence, as well as the general administration of justice.
David, let me ask you, since he was elected, what kind of steps has President Ramaphosa taken to sideline supporters of former President Zuma?
Well, he certainly hoed his own path. There are a range of policy measures that have been taken. For example, the nuclear, Zuma's desire to build a whole bunch of nuclear power plants in South Africa has been taken off the agenda, and that was to be a very big payday for Zuma and the Guptas. But in tackling corruption, I think he's parted company with Zuma, and he has riled Zuma in appointing generally competent and honest people to be on the boards and in the executive suites of our state-owned enterprises, to putting competent and independent people in charge of the prosecuting authority and most of the important policing agency. He set up a special unit of the National Prosecuting Authority whose remit is focused on state capture cases emanating from the state capture era, the era of the Zuma administration. So he's done a fair amount. You know, as I said, as I think I might have said earlier, he's been a far more impressive and resolute leader of the state than he has been leader of the ANC. And I think, you know, the simple reason for that is that I think the public support him in great numbers, but in the ANC, support for him on the one hand and the Magashule Zuma faction on the other hand is very, very equally divided. In fact, it might even, the small majority may even rest with Zuma Magashule.
David, you know, how worried are officials now in South Africa? I mean, do you believe that we're going to be seeing more corruption cases being brought against more officials going forward?
Yeah, if the Magashule Zuma faction play their cards very early, and succeed in doing what would be targeting a major opposition, namely the NPA and the Hawks, who are the principal investigating body, then we'll see considerable conflict.
So, Madoda, in August, President Ramaphosa said that ANC officials must take leave from their positions if they're charged with corruption and that they must resign if they are convicted. Has that policy been applied at all thus far?
It has been applied for the members who are in the regions, who are in local areas. But so far at a national level with prominent cases, it has never been applied. And it looks like now there is even a retreat from it because they are saying they are consulting lawyers because of the legal challenges of placing some people away during the duration of their trial. And that in itself, I do think that we wouldn't expect Ace Magashule, the Secretary General of the ANC, to step aside. And he has said that much, that he will not step aside at this particular moment. So there seemed to be a retreat from that position, except for those that have been exercised on lower levels.
It has applied to people somewhat sort of lower on the totem pole who have been removed or persuaded to step down. But it has not applied to people of any seniority whatsoever. There is at the moment a sitting MP who was previously under Zuma, a minister of intelligence or state security, who has been charged with bribery while he was a parliamentarian, and very serious bribery. And he remains in Parliament, and he's not nearly as big a deal as Magashule, although quite high profile and powerful. And if he can't be removed from his position, I can't see how they're going to do it to Magashule.
All right, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much to all our guests, David Lewis and Somadoda Fikeni. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.